Rain had a way of making everything in Ethan's neighborhood feel quieter, lonelier. The street was lined with identical houses, the kind that all looked asleep after midnight, except one. Across the street, through a curtain of mist, Mrs. Hale's bedroom light glowed like a small sun that refused to die. Ethan first noticed it 3 nights ago. At first, he thought nothing of it. Maybe the old woman had fallen asleep with the lamp on. But by the 4th night, when it was still burning at the same dim, amber hue, something began to unsettle him. He had lived across from her for nearly a year. They'd spoken only a few times, polite nods, a wave while she watered her plants, the occasional, good evening. She lived alone. No visitors. No family that he knew of. But even solitude had patterns, and hers had quietly vanished. Now, her mailbox overflowed, her curtains never shifted, and that single window pulsed with a glow that didn't belong to any lamp he'd ever seen. Sometimes it seemed to flicker, not like electricity struggling to stay alive, but like something breathing. That night, as thunder murmured in the distance, Ethan stood at his own window, watching. The streetlights flickered once, twice, then steadied. Across the street, Mrs. Hale's window remained constant, defiant. The rain made thin rivers down the glass, warping the light into trembling streaks. He tried to reason with himself. Maybe she'd gone on a trip. Maybe she'd left the light on for safety. But that didn't explain the faint shape he saw moving inside. The figure, still, then swaying slowly as if pacing. He blinked hard. The shape vanished. His breath clouded the window. He wiped it away with his sleeve, staring harder. Nothing. Just the steady, golden light. Ethan exhaled and stepped back. He told himself it was probably a trick of the rain. Shadows, reflections, his tired mind filling the emptiness with ghosts. But when he turned off his own lights, the glow across the street seemed to grow brighter, pushing against the darkness between their houses. He went to bed, but sleep didn't come. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that amber glow. It pulsed faintly in his mind like a heartbeat, rhythmic, patient, alive. By 3 a.m., he gave up trying. He got up, walked to his living room window again, and pulled the curtains slightly open. The light was still on. Only this time, it didn't look steady anymore. It was moving, a slow fade in, then out, like someone inside was standing in front of it, blocking it, then stepping aside again. A shiver crawled up Ethan's neck. He grabbed his phone, switched on the camera, and zoomed in across the street. But before he could focus, the curtain in Mrs. Hale's window shifted. Just once. And behind it, for the briefest moment, he saw the silhouette of a person, standing perfectly still. When he lowered his phone, the curtain was motionless again. And the light across the street burned on, brighter than before. Ethan woke before sunrise, his mind still haunted by the image, that motionless silhouette behind Mrs. Hale's curtain. The storm had passed, but the sky remained gray and heavy, as if reluctant to let the night go. He stood by the window again. The light across the street was finally off. For a moment he felt relief. Maybe it had all been nothing. Exhaustion, imagination, paranoia. But the longer he stared at that dark, still house, the more he realized what truly unsettled him. He had never once seen Mrs. Hale leave. Her car was still parked in the same place. Her mailbox still bulged. The curtains hadn't moved. Only the light had changed. Ethan poured himself coffee and tried to shake the feeling. "I'll check on her," he muttered under his breath, though he didn't know if he meant it. People didn't just vanish in this town, not without someone noticing. By noon, curiosity had hardened into unease. He crossed the street. The pavement was still damp, glistening in faint daylight. Up close, her house looked smaller, lonelier. The front porch sagged slightly, paint peeling around the edges of the doorframe. He hesitated before knocking. His heart thudded in his chest, every second stretching longer than it should. Then, knock knock. The sound was swallowed by silence. He waited, listened. Nothing. No footsteps, no creak of the floorboards, no voice calling back. Just the faint hum of distant traffic and the soft rustle of leaves. He knocked again, louder this time. "Mrs. Hale." His voice sounded strange, too loud against the stillness. He glanced toward the window where that light had burned for days. The curtain was slightly open now, like someone had tugged it back just enough to peek through. Ethan's breath caught. Was someone watching him? He leaned closer, peering in through the small gap. The inside looked frozen. A single armchair faced the window. A table beside it held a half-finished cup of tea, the liquid long since turned dark and still. Dust motes floated lazily through the air, glimmering in the weak daylight. Something about it felt wrong, not just empty, but paused as if the house itself was holding its breath. He knocked one last time. Then, after a long moment, he reached for the doorknob. It turned slightly, unlocked. He froze. A wave of cold air drifted from inside, carrying a faint smell of dampness and something metallic. He pushed the door open an inch, just enough to glimpse the narrow hallway beyond. Faded wallpaper. Family photos. Silence. "Mrs. Hale?" he called again. His voice trembled this time. Still no response. Ethan took a step back, debating whether to go in or call someone. He felt the weight of the street pressing in behind him, every window, every empty house watching. Then he heard it. He turned sharply. A sound, soft, deliberate, came from inside the house, like the creak of a floorboard under slow footsteps. He squinted through the doorway, pulse hammering. "Hello." Another sound. Tap, tap, closer this time. And then, silence again. Ethan stepped backward off the porch, eyes locked on the doorway. The air seemed heavier now, pressing against his skin. He waited for the door to open. For someone to appear. For the knock that never came. But the house stayed still, quiet, patient. And then, from somewhere deep inside, a faint light flickered, the same amber hue he'd seen through the window last night. Pulsed once, then went out. Ethan barely slept that night. The image of Mrs. Hale's door, slightly ajar, darkness stretching behind it, played in his mind over and over. He kept telling himself there had to be a rational explanation. Maybe she'd gone to stay with family. Maybe she'd left the light on by accident. But the sound he'd heard, those deliberate footsteps, wouldn't leave him. By morning, he decided to return, not out of courage, but because he couldn't stand the uncertainty anymore. The street was quiet, too quiet. Even the birds seemed to avoid the air around Mrs. Hale's house. He stopped at the porch, noticing something new. The door, once slightly open, was now shut tight. The keyhole was rusted, the brass glinting faintly in the pale light. It was as if the house had closed itself while he slept. Ethan crouched, peering at the threshold. That's when he saw it, a small folded note, half tucked under the door, edges damp from last night's mist. He hesitated before pulling it out. The paper was old, yellowed, and the handwriting, shaky, almost desperate. "Don't trust the lights." Just 4 words. Nothing else. He stared at them, heart pounding, unsure what to make of it. Was it a warning? A joke? He turned the note over, blank. The back smelled faintly of perfume, the kind Mrs. Hale always wore when she gardened in the evenings. A chill rippled through him. The lights. The ones that had stayed on for days. Ethan looked up at the window, the same one that had glowed night after night. Now it was dark again. Curtain drawn. No movement. He swallowed hard and slipped the note into his pocket. Maybe she'd left it for someone else. Or maybe someone else had left it for her. The thought made his skin crawl. He circled around the house, scanning for any sign of entry. A broken latch, a cracked window, anything. But everything looked intact, untouched. Except for one thing. The backyard light, a small bulb above the side door, was flickering faintly. On and off, irregular, like it was trying to signal something. Ethan stepped closer, eyes narrowing. The flicker wasn't random. It pulsed in pairs. 2 short bursts, pause. 2 short bursts, pause. Over and over. He didn't know Morse code, but it didn't feel accidental. That's when he noticed something else. Muddy footprints leading from the light toward the back door. They were faint, as if washed out by rain, but they were recent. The pattern stopped right at the door, and the doormat was missing. Ethan reached out and turned the handle. He leaned forward, pressing his ear against the wood. For a moment, he thought he heard whispering, soft, indistinct, like someone talking through fabric. Then, a faint scrape from the other side of the door. He stumbled back, pulse racing. "Mrs. Hale?" he called, but his voice was barely a whisper. No answer. Just silence. He looked down at the note again. "Don't trust the lights." That's when the backyard lights stopped flickering and turned on. Full brightness, blinding as if someone had thrown a switch. Ethan shielded his eyes, stepping backward off the porch. When he looked again, the light was steady, burning strong. And behind the glass of the side door, he thought he saw a shadow move. A tall, still shape, watching him. He ran. But as he reached his front porch and turned around, the light across the street blinked twice, slowly, as if in reply. By the next morning, Ethan couldn't ignore it anymore. Something was wrong in that house, and pretending otherwise was starting to feel dangerous. The note, the flickering light, the shadow behind the glass, every piece of it gnawed at him. He needed answers, something solid to prove he wasn't losing his mind. So he went to the police. The station was small, the kind where everyone knew everyone. The walls were lined with old community posters, and the air smelled faintly of burnt coffee. Officer Daniels, a man Ethan had seen a dozen times at the grocery store, was sitting behind the front desk. Ethan hesitated before speaking. "I think something's happened to my neighbor," he said finally. "Mrs. Hale. I haven't seen her in days." Daniels raised an eyebrow. "You sure she didn't just go visit family? People her age do that sometimes." "She didn't take her car," Ethan said quickly. "Her lights were on for 3 nights straight. And then I found this." He pulled the note from his pocket and slid it across the counter. Daniels frowned, reading the shaky handwriting. "Don't trust the lights? What's that supposed to mean?" "That's what I want to know." The officer sighed and turned to his computer. "All right, let's check." His fingers clacked across the keyboard, the glow of the monitor reflecting in his glasses. Seconds passed. Then his brow furrowed. "That's strange," he muttered. "What?" Ethan leaned forward. "She's not listed in any recent welfare checks, hospital reports, nothing. But it says here," he paused, scrolling again, "that a missing person report was filed on her 3 days ago." Ethan blinked. "Filed by who?" Daniel's face tightened. "That's the thing. The report was entered, but there's no name attached. No contact info, no details, nothing. Just gone." "Gone?" Ethan repeated. Daniels nodded slowly. "It's like the file was started, then wiped. It shouldn't even show up on the record list." A chill crawled up Ethan's spine. So someone knew she was missing, and tried to erase it. The officer leaned back in his chair. "Look, I'll send someone by to do a quick check, all right? Probably nothing." He said it lightly, but his tone carried unease. As Ethan turned to leave, Daniels called after him, "Hey, did she have any family around here?" "No," Ethan said. "She lived alone." The officer hesitated. "Then who filed that report?" Ethan didn't have an answer. Back home, the street looked the same, calm, quiet, untouched. But the house across from his felt heavier now, like it was holding its breath again. The blinds were drawn tight. The flickering backyard light was off. He decided to wait until dark. If the lights came back on, he'd know something, or someone, was inside. As night fell, he sat by his window, eyes fixed on Mrs. Hale's house. Hours passed. Midnight came. Nothing. Just darkness. And then, at exactly 12:13 a.m., a faint glow appeared, not from the window this time, but from the second floor. A room he'd never seen lit before. Ethan stood slowly. The glow pulsed once, then twice, the same rhythm as before. 2 short flashes. 2 short flashes. His breath quickened. He grabbed the note again, its edges soft from being handled so much. "Don't trust the lights." And just as he whispered the words under his breath, his phone buzzed on the table. A known number. He answered, cautiously. But there was no voice on the other end. Just faint static, and then a woman's whisper. "Stop watching the house." The line went dead. Ethan turned back toward the window, but the light in Mrs. Hale's room was gone. And for the first time, he realized the glow reflecting faintly in his own living room window wasn't coming from across the street, it was behind him. Ethan spun around. His living room was bathed in a faint, unnatural glow, soft, pulsing and wrong. It came from the hallway, spilling out like a whisper of light through a door he didn't remember leaving open. His breath hitched as he took a slow step forward. The house was quiet except for the hum, low and steady, like electricity under the floor. Each step he took felt heavier, as if the air itself resisted him. He reached the end of the hallway, and there it was, a door. He froze. He had lived in this house for 3 years. He knew every room, every corner. But this door, pale gray, with a rusted brass knob, hadn't been there before. Ethan blinked, certain his mind was playing tricks. He ran his hand along the wall beside it. The wallpaper was cold, slightly damp. The light leaking from the crack beneath the door was the same amber hue he'd seen from Mrs. Hale's windows. His pulse thundered in his ears. He whispered to himself, "This isn't possible." He grasped the knob. It was warm, too warm, as if someone had just touched it. The moment he turned it, the hum grew louder. The door opened inward with a soft click. The light flooded out, washing the hallway in gold. Ethan squinted, shielding his eyes. When his vision adjusted, he saw it, a room. Small, square, and old-fashioned. Dusty lace curtains, a faded rug, and in the center, a single armchair facing the window. It was her armchair. He stepped inside. The air smelled faintly of tea and perfume, the same scent from the note. The same scent from Mrs. Hale's porch. Every instinct told him to run, but something stronger, curiosity, dread, something in between, kept him rooted. His gaze landed on the table beside the chair. A cup of tea sat there, half full, still faintly steaming. He whispered, "Mrs. Hale?" No answer. Just the hum, vibrating through the floorboards. He looked toward the window, and froze again. The view outside wasn't his street. It wasn't anything. Just darkness, stretching endlessly, broken only by faint, flickering lights in the distance. He felt his throat tighten. This wasn't a room in his house. This wasn't even his house anymore. He turned to leave, but the door was gone. Only the wall remained. Smooth, unbroken. Panic surged through him. No, no, no. He pressed his palms against the wall, searching for any seam, any edge. Nothing. Then, from behind the chair, came a soft creak. He turned slowly. The armchair moved, just slightly, as if someone had shifted their weight. A whisper followed, barely audible, a voice he almost recognized. "Ethan." His heart stopped. It was her voice. Mrs. Hale's. Close. Too close. He backed away, eyes wide, the hum rising to a sharp, electric hiss. The air shimmered. The lights flickered. And then, everything went black. When he opened his eyes, he was standing back in his hallway, the glow gone, the door vanished. But on the floor where the door had been lay a new note. In the same trembling handwriting. "You opened the wrong one." Ethan stared at the note on the floor, its edges curled like it had been waiting there for years. "You opened the wrong one." The words burned into his mind. His hands trembled as he picked it up. The paper was warm again, faintly humming, like it carried the same strange current as that room that wasn't supposed to exist. He didn't sleep that night. Every sound in the house, the ticking clock, the hum of the fridge, the wind outside, felt alive. Watching. Waiting. The moment he closed his eyes, he saw flashes of that room again. The armchair, the steaming cup, the whisper. By morning, he knew he had to find proof that what happened was real. He turned on his old voice recorder, the one he used to keep by the window when he worked nights, hoping to catch strange noises he'd heard weeks ago. He hadn't listened to those recordings since. The first few files were ordinary. Distant cars. The faint buzz of streetlights. Then, on the recording from last night, the night he found the door, he heard something that made his stomach twist. A faint hum. Then his own voice. He frowned. He didn't remember speaking. Then came another voice. Whispering between bursts of static. "Don't open the wrong one." His blood ran cold. He hit pause, replayed it. The same words. The same voice. It was her. Mrs. Hale. The tone was unmistakable, that gentle calm she always had when she'd greet him from her porch. But it wasn't normal speech. It sounded distant, stretched, like it had been dragged through static from somewhere far beyond. Ethan replayed the clip again and again, turning up the volume until the faint background noises grew clearer. Behind her whisper, there was something else, a rhythm, steady and mechanical. Click, click, click. He froze. That sound, he'd heard it before. The flickering of her light. 2 short flashes, pause. 2 short flashes. He scrubbed forward in the recording, but the static grew thicker, louder, almost suffocating. Then, a sudden sharp whisper cut through the noise. His name. Ethan. He dropped the recorder. It clattered to the floor, still playing, the sound now distorted beyond recognition. For a moment, the static seemed to fill the room itself. The lights flickered. "Stop it," he whispered. But the hum only grew louder. He yanked the batteries out. Silence fell instantly, heavy and absolute. He stood there, trembling, the recorder lifeless in his hand. Then he noticed something. Across the room, on his old television, which hadn't worked in years, a faint light flickered. The screen glowed pale gray, static dancing across it. Ethan hadn't touched that TV in months. Slowly, drawn by fear and fascination, he stepped closer. Through the haze of static, an image began to form, grainy, shifting. It was his living room, exactly as it was now. The same furniture. The same lighting. The same angle. Except there was someone standing in it. A woman. Faint, half-shadowed. She stood near the hallway, right where the door had appeared the night before. He couldn't see her face, but he knew that figure, the way her head tilted slightly, the slope of her shoulders. Mrs. Hale. The static deepened, the screen flickering faster. Her shape moved, closer, turning toward him. And then, in a burst of white noise, she spoke again. "Ethan, it's not me you should be afraid of." The screen went black. A faint sound echoed through the house. Not from the TV. Not from outside. From the hallway. A soft, slow knock. The knock that never came, until now. The knock echoed through the hallway, soft, deliberate, and impossibly slow. Ethan froze where he stood, eyes locked on the shadowed doorway. It wasn't loud, but it carried weight, like each tap pressed deeper into the house itself. The pause. Knock. He didn't move for a full minute. The silence that followed was even worse than the sound, thick, electric, alive. Then the air shifted. The faint hum he'd come to dread vibrated through the walls again, and a single thought burned in his mind. The house knows. He grabbed a flashlight and inched toward the hallway. The beam trembled in his shaking hand. Every creak of the floor made him flinch. When he reached the end of the hall, he found the wall where the impossible door had been. The wallpaper looked normal again, smooth and undisturbed, but his gut twisted with the certainty that it was still there, hiding beneath the surface. Ethan pressed his hand flat against it. Cold. Solid. Lifeless. Then, something shifted beneath his palm. A faint pulse, like the wall itself was breathing. He jerked back, heart pounding. "No," he whispered. "Not again." He stumbled into the living room, gasping. That's when he saw it, the framed photo on the wall. It was crooked just slightly. He didn't remember touching it. He straightened it instinctively, but as he did, something fell from behind the frame, a thin envelope coated in dust. He hesitated, then opened it. Inside was an old photograph. Miss Hale, younger, smiling, stood in front of a house. Not hers. Ethan's breath hitched. In the background of the photo, through the front window, he could see the faint outline of a man standing inside. His face was blurred, but the shape, the height, it was him. The date on the back read April 12, 1998. He hadn't even moved into this house until 20 years later. The air turned heavy. The faint hum rose again. The light bulb above him flickered, casting long, twitching shadows across the floor. Ethan backed away from the photo. His thoughts raced. Was this her house before it was mine? Was the room I saw hers, all along? Then, a soft rustling sound came from the hallway, not footsteps this time, but whispering. Dozens of overlapping voices, low and distant, like echoes from the walls themselves. He stepped closer, gripping the flashlight tighter. The voices grew clearer. Don't open. She remembers. The light. The beam flickered as he reached the end of the hall again. The wallpaper was peeling now, just slightly, and beneath it he could see something, faint, red markings, letters carved into the plaster. He leaned in. The words were uneven, scratched deep into the wall. The house keeps what it loves. The whispering stopped. The silence that followed was suffocating. Ethan stumbled backward, slamming into the opposite wall. The flashlight rolled from his hand, spinning across the floor until it pointed upward, straight at the ceiling. There, faint but visible, were handprints. Small, smudged, pressed into the plaster above him, as if someone had tried to claw their way out. Ethan couldn't breathe. The hum returned, louder now, vibrating through the walls, through him. And then, beneath the noise, a voice rose again, hers. Ethan. He turned, and in the reflection of the hallway mirror, he saw movement. Mrs. Hale, standing in the doorway behind him, her eyes pale and unblinking. He spun around, but the space was empty. Only the sound of the walls exhaling, as if the house had finally remembered something it was never meant to. The electricity died at exactly 2:13 a.m. It wasn't a flicker or surge this time, it was a total collapse. Every bulb, every hum of current, every faint sound of power breathing through the house vanished in an instant, leaving behind a silence so dense it felt alive. Ethan's flashlight was still on the floor from earlier. He lunged for it, hands shaking, the beam slicing through the dark. The air felt thicker tonight, heavier, charged. His breath came out in clouds, as though the temperature had dropped 10 degrees in a blink. He turned toward the hallway, the one with the breathing walls. The wallpaper now hung in ragged strips, curling at the edges like scorched skin. In the pale light, the red letters beneath, "The house keeps what it loves," looked fresher, darker, wet. Ethan swallowed hard. "You're not real," he whispered. "You're just—" The sound cut him off. A soft creak. The unmistakable hinge of a door opening, the same impossible one that shouldn't exist. He aimed the flashlight toward the end of the hall. There it was again, a seam in the wall, splitting slowly down the middle. The air that poured out was cold, stale, and wrong. Ethan stepped closer despite the voice in his head screaming run. He could feel static crawling over his skin. The door opened wider, revealing only blackness beyond, a dark so complete that even his flashlight refused to touch it. Then, from inside that void, came a light. A dim, trembling glow, like the flicker of an old television. Ethan's chest tightened. The static hum from before was back, only now it pulsed in rhythm with the light. He took another step, drawn forward as if by memory. And then he heard it. A whisper. Faint. Familiar. "Help me." Ethan froze. It was Mrs. Hale's voice, but weaker, distant, as though buried deep behind walls. "Where are you?" he called, his voice cracking. The answer came as a soft sigh. "You shouldn't have stayed." The door slammed shut. The light went out completely, plunging everything into darkness again. Ethan staggered back, tripping over the flashlight, which sputtered and died in his hand. He was blind now, alone in the dark with only the sound of the house breathing around him. Something brushed past his arm. He froze, every nerve in his body screaming. Then came another sound, a faint scraping along the floorboards, moving closer. He backed away until his shoulders hit the cold wall. And then the lights came back. All at once. Every bulb in the house flared to life, blindingly bright. Ethan shielded his eyes. When he blinked the white haze away, his stomach turned to stone. Every picture frame in the living room, dozens of them, now showed the same image. Mrs. Hale, standing in his hallway, staring straight at the camera. The date printed at the bottom of each photo was tonight's. Ethan stumbled backward, heart racing. The air buzzed again, the hum rising into a low drone. The light began to flicker violently, once, twice, and then everything burst into darkness for the final time. No hum. No static. No sound. Only a single, faint glow now, coming from across the street. The neighbor's house. Mrs. Hale's light, the one that had been on every night since she vanished, was now off. Completely. Ethan stood by the window, staring into the void where the light used to be. For the first time, the entire street was dark. And then, somewhere in that darkness, something moved. A shape, crossing slowly toward his front door. The last thing Ethan heard before the knocking began again was the whisper, soft and calm, slipping through the silence. "Now you remember."